In November 1923, a loaf of bread in Germany cost 5.6 billion marks. The number is not a metaphor. It is not a rhetorical device. It is the price printed on the receipts of bakeries across the Weimar Republic in the final weeks of the most catastrophic currency collapse in modern European history. Workers were paid twice a day because the money lost value between morning and afternoon. Savings accounts that had held a family's wealth for decades were worth less than the paper the statements were printed on. In Nürtingen, a small town in the Neckar Valley of Württemberg, roughly 30 kilometers south of Stuttgart, a baker's son was watching all of this happen from inside his father's shop. He was 23 years old. His name was Albrecht Schnizler. His father wanted him to take over the bakery. Schnizler refused. He had trained as a fitter and technical draftsman. He had completed an engineering degree. And while the currency around him disintegrated, while his father's bread cost billions of marks per loaf, Albrecht Schnizler went down into the basement of that bakery and built a hand drill. The drill was not a prototype in the modern sense. It was not a concept sketch. It was a finished, functional, hand-operated metal drilling tool designated number 18. Schnizler called it a Metabo, a metal drill turner. It was designed to drill precise holes in metal at a time when riveting, not welding, was the primary method of joining metal components across construction, shipbuilding, and manufacturing. Every rivet needed a hole, and every hole needed a drill. The demand was structural, not discretionary. If you worked in metal, you needed this tool. Schnizler understood something about the hyperinflation that most people did not. The German mark was worthless, but foreign currencies were not. A product that could be sold abroad, priced in British pounds or American dollars, could generate income that held its value while the domestic economy collapsed around it. The drill was not just a tool, it was an export strategy built into a product. In 1923, the same year he built the drill, Schnizler attended a tool exhibition in Remscheid and met a merchant named Walter Rauch. Rauch placed the company's first major export order, 500 metal drill turners at a price of 4 shillings, 9 pence per unit. British pounds, hard currency, the order was placed before the company even formally existed. On the 19th of February 1924, Schnizler formalized the business. He founded Schnizler GmbH alongside Julius Closs, the son of a Nürtingen brewer. The company's initial capital came not from a bank and not from an investor. It came from the brewing family. Closs had something more valuable than money. He had a building. The building had a history of its own. It had been constructed in 1812 as a cavalry barracks. By 1835, it had been converted into a warehouse and residential property. In 1881, the Closs family purchased the site and transformed it into the Klossische Sonnenbrauerei, the Sun Brewery, along with an inn called the Sun. For decades, the brewery produced beer for Nürtingen. Then the First World War ended and the brewery closed. The machinery was removed. The fermentation rooms went silent. The building sat empty, a relic of a business that peacetime had failed to sustain. Schnizler and Closs moved into it. The rooms that had held malt and hops now held metal lathes and drilling equipment. The brewery became the first headquarters of what would eventually become Metabo. The address was Kirchstrasse, Church Street, in the center of Nürtingen. In 1925, Schnizler GmbH installed the first telephone in the town. The company was assigned telephone number 2. According to the Nürtingen City Archives, telephone number 1 had not yet been assigned to anyone. The company that had been founded in the basement of a bakery, headquartered in a defunct brewery, was now the first business in its town to own a telephone, and it received the second number only because the first did not yet exist. By 1928, the product had become the brand. Schnizler and Closs took the word Metabo, removed 10 of its 16 letters and created the name Metabo. In 1927, Walter Rauch, the merchant who had placed that first export order in Remscheid, formally joined the company as sales director. The management trio was complete. Schnizler engineered. Closs financed and provided the premises. Rauch sold. In 1932, the company was officially renamed Metabo Closs, Rauch and Schnizler KG. The original hand drill, the number 18, sold over 50,000 units. It still exists. It sits today in the lobby of Metabo's headquarters in Nürtingen, 100 years after it was built in a bakery basement during the worst inflation in German history. Through the late 1920s and into the 1930s, Metabo grew steadily but did not change its fundamental nature. The company manufactured hand-operated tools. The drills were mechanical, driven by gears and human effort. They were well made, precisely engineered, and durable enough to sell across Europe. But they were not electric. In a decade when electrification was transforming manufacturing on both sides of the Atlantic, Metabo was still building tools powered by the hands that held them. In 1932, Metabo introduced a handheld drill with a pistol grip and trigger switch, a design that seems obvious in retrospect, but was a genuine ergonomic breakthrough at the time. Previous drills required the operator to hold the body of the tool with one hand and operate the mechanism with the other. The pistol grip consolidated control into a single-hand position, allowing the other hand to stabilize the workpiece or the operator's body. The design became the template for how drills would be held for the next century. Every cordless drill sold today descends from that form factor. In 1934, that changed further. Metabo produced its first electric handheld drill, a 100-watt rotary tool that shifted the company from manual craftsmanship into powered equipment. The move was decisive. By 1936, the company had manufactured its first geared chuck. A bench grinder followed in 1937. The product line was expanding and the workforce had grown to 150 people. The company was no longer a startup run from a brewery. It was an established manufacturer with a name that metalworkers across Germany recognized. The company's focus was metalworking. Not woodworking, not general construction, not consumer DIY. The drills, the grinders, the chucks, everything was designed for people who worked in steel, iron and aluminium. Fabricators, fitters, shipbuilders, industrial tradespeople who needed tools that could handle hard materials under sustained use. This focus would define Metabo for the next 9 decades. Then the war came. Nürtingen was not a primary target for Allied bombing raids. It was a small town, not a major industrial center like Stuttgart or Mannheim. The Metabo factory on Kirchstrasse survived the war years without serious structural damage. Production continued under wartime conditions with restricted materials, conscripted workers, and the grinding pressure of a total war economy. But no bombs fell on the building that had once been a cavalry barracks, then a brewery, then a power tool factory. When the war ended in May 1945, the machinery was intact. The building was standing. The company had survived. But on a night in late autumn 1945, months after the surrender, a fire broke out in the plant. It was not a military attack or sabotage. It was an industrial fire in a post-war landscape where fire prevention infrastructure was barely functional and resources were non-existent. The fire destroyed close to 75% of the manufacturing facilities. 3/4 of everything Metabo had built over 2 decades, the machinery, the tooling, the production lines, the inventory, gone in a single night. The war had spared the factory. Peace had not. Reconstruction took 3 years. In post-war Germany, raw materials were rationed, skilled labor was scarce, and capital was almost non-existent. The currency had not yet been reformed. That would come with the introduction of the Deutsche Mark in June 1948. Metabo rebuilt its factory in an economy that was still operating on barter, occupation scrip, and black market exchanges. By 1948, the plant was operational again. The company went back to making drills and grinders in the same town, on the same street, in the same building. The work was the same. The country around it was completely different. Germany's post-war economic recovery, the Wirtschaftswunder, was beginning. Factories were being rebuilt. Infrastructure was being laid. Construction was accelerating across every sector of the economy. Every construction site needed tools, every metalworker needed a drill, and every fabrication shop needed a grinder. The demand was enormous, and Metabo was positioned to meet it, but the old brewery building was no longer large enough. In 1953, Metabo began construction of a new plant in Nürtingen's industrial zone, Steinach, roughly 500 meters from the original site. The relocation would take 16 years to complete. In 1969, the new administrative building was finished, and Metabo's headquarters moved permanently from Kirchstrasse to Steinach. The old Sun Brewery was left behind, but Nürtingen was not. Metabo had been founded in Nürtingen in 1924. It is still headquartered in Nürtingen today. It has never left. In 1957, Metabo introduced the Type 7608, the world's first mass-produced impact drill. Previous drills had been rotary only, meaning they spun the bit and relied on the operator to apply forward pressure. An impact drill added a hammering action to the rotation, delivering thousands of percussive blows per minute. This allowed the bit to penetrate hard materials like concrete, brick and stone that a standard rotary drill could not efficiently handle. The impact drill was not a refinement, it was a category. Before 1957, drilling into masonry on a job site required a separate rotary hammer, a large and expensive specialist machine, or manual effort with a star drill and a hammer. After 1957, a single handheld tool could do it. Every tradesperson who worked in construction, every electrician running conduit through concrete walls, every plumber fixing brackets to masonry, every HVAC installer anchoring ductwork to a ceiling, all of them now had a tool that had not existed before Metabo built it. The Type 7608 was the first mass-produced impact drill series in the world. Metabo did not patent the concept and license it. It built it, manufactured it at scale, and sold it to anyone who needed to drill into concrete. In 1966, Metabo introduced something equally significant, but far less visible. The company developed the S-automatic safety clutch for angle grinders. An angle grinder spinning at 11,000 revolutions per minute is one of the most dangerous handheld tools in existence. If the cutting disc binds in the material, the reaction torque can rip the tool from the operator's hands or shatter the disc. Either outcome can cause severe injury. Metabo's S-automatic clutch allowed the spindle to slip if the disc jammed, absorbing the reaction torque before it reached the operator. It was the first mechanical safety clutch built into a small angle grinder. Before 1966, angle grinders had been large, heavy, two-handed tools, 7-inch and 9-inch machines that required significant physical strength to control. Metabo's 1966 grinder was the first small angle grinder, a one-handed tool compact enough for tight spaces and prolonged use. The safety clutch made that compactness possible. Without it, a one-handed grinder that kicked back was an uncontrollable liability. With it, the tool that had been the most dangerous in the tradesperson's kit became, in Metabo's hands, measurably safer. The design of the clutch was not electronic, it was purely mechanical, built from springs, friction plates, and precision-machined components that engaged only when the torque exceeded a specific threshold. Mechanical systems do not need batteries. They do not need software. They do not malfunction because the sensor failed. They work every time, in every condition, for the life of the tool. That was the engineering philosophy. Build the safety into the physics of the machine, not into a circuit board that can be omitted in a cost reduction meeting. In 1969, Metabo added electronic speed regulation to its impact drills. In 1981, it introduced the first 1,000-watt impact drill with electronic constant speed control, a system that maintained the drill's RPM under load, preventing the kind of slowdown that causes overheating and premature wear. These were not marketing features, they were engineering decisions made for people who use the tools 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, for years at a time. No press conferences, no launch events, no brand ambassadors. Just a better drill, a safer grinder, and a company that built them in the same German town it had never left. The 1970s marked Metabo's international expansion. The company had been exporting since the 1920s, ever since Walter Rauch's first order for the British market. But the establishment of foreign subsidiaries was a different scale of commitment. Exporting meant shipping tools through distributors. Establishing a subsidiary meant hiring local staff, renting premises, providing service and support, understanding the local market, and committing to a permanent presence in another country. Metabo USA was founded in 1971, based in Long Island City, New York. It was the company's first overseas subsidiary. The American market was dominated by domestic brands, with Black & Decker on the consumer side, and Milwaukee and others in the professional segment. Metabo entered not with advertising campaigns or retail partnerships, but through specialist industrial distributors who sold to metalworking shops, fabrication businesses, and construction firms. The tools were expensive by American standards. They were also built to German tolerances that American professionals were not accustomed to seeing. By 1981, the American operation had moved to Westchester, Pennsylvania, closer to the East Coast's industrial and construction base. Subsidiaries followed across Europe, then further. By the mid-1970s, Metabo had sales operations on every continent. The expansion was not aggressive, it was methodical. The company listened to how tradespeople worked in different countries, accounting for different voltages, different plug types, different safety standards, different construction practices, different materials. A metalworker in Germany used a grinder differently than a metalworker in Brazil. A construction crew in Scandinavia worked in temperatures and conditions that bore no resemblance to a job site in the Middle East. Metabo adapted its tools accordingly, developing ergonomic features and specifications tailored to local working conditions, rather than shipping a single global product and hoping for the best. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, Metabo focused on advancing its corded tool platform for professional metalworking and construction. The angle grinder became the company's flagship product, the tool most associated with the Metabo name and the tool where the company's engineering philosophy was most fully expressed. Metabo grinders were not sold in home improvement stores. They were sold to tradespeople through specialist distributors. The tools were heavier, built with more material, and more expensive than consumer alternatives. They were also built to last in ways that consumer tools were not, with metal gear housings instead of plastic, wound copper motors designed for continuous duty, and that mechanical safety clutch that no other manufacturer offered. In 1986, Metabo developed its first cordless tool. The early cordless platform used nickel-cadmium battery cells, the best technology available at the time, but limited by the memory effect that degraded capacity over time if the batteries were not fully discharged before recharging. The cordless tools were supplementary. The real work was still done with corded power. But the platform existed, and Metabo was building the expertise in battery technology that would prove decisive 2 decades later. By the late 1990s, Metabo had over 25 subsidiaries worldwide and more than 100 importers. The company employed roughly 1,800 people. It manufactured only in Nürtingen. Every tool that carried the Metabo name was engineered and produced in the same town where Albrecht Schnizler had built his first drill in a bakery basement. In 1999, Metabo acquired Electra Beckham, a power tool manufacturer based in Meppen in northern Germany. Combined with the acquisition of 2 other woodworking machine manufacturers, this briefly made Metabo the second largest producer of stationary woodworking machines in the world. It was the biggest strategic move the company had ever made, and it was a mistake. Metabo's DNA was metalworking. Angle grinders, impact drills, die grinders, metal cutting saws, tools designed for steel and concrete, not timber. The woodworking acquisitions diluted the brand's focus, stretched the engineering teams across unfamiliar product categories, and required investment in manufacturing competencies the company had never developed. Metabo was a specialist. Specialists survive by being the best at one thing. The woodworking expansion tried to make Metabo something broader, something more general, and in doing so it threatened the precision of the identity that had sustained the company for 75 years. Over the following decade, Metabo reversed course. It restructured production. It refocused on its core competencies, metalworking, construction, and renovation tools for professional users. In 2004, it established a production plant in Shanghai to manage volume manufacturing costs for high-demand product lines. In 2006, Electra Beckham was fully integrated. By 2010, the Meppen plant was closed and the last traces of the woodworking detour were erased from the company's operations. The lesson had cost time and money, but the company learned it. What remained was what had always been there. Angle grinders, impact drills, corded tools built for professionals who worked in metal, and a new category that was about to change everything. In 2005, Metabo introduced lithium-ion battery technology into its cordless tool range. The company had been building cordless tools since 1986, first with nickel-cadmium cells and later with nickel-metal hydride. Both chemistries had limitations. Nickel-cadmium suffered from the memory effect, meaning if the battery was recharged before being fully depleted, it would gradually lose total capacity. Nickel-metal hydride was better, but still heavy, still limited in energy density, and still prone to self-discharge. Lithium-ion changed the equation. The cells were lighter, held more charge per unit of weight, and did not suffer from the memory effect. A tradesperson could charge a lithium-ion battery at any state of discharge without degrading its total capacity. For someone who recharged during every lunch break, who topped off the battery between tasks, who needed the tool ready to go at all times, this was not a convenience. It was a fundamental change in how cordless tools could be used on a job site. Metabo did not stop at the battery, it built a platform. The 18-volt slide-style battery system that Metabo introduced became the foundation for an entire ecosystem of cordless tools, from drills and impact drivers to grinders, circular saws, reciprocating saws, vacuums, lights, and dozens of other categories. One battery format, one charger format, and an expanding universe of tools that all shared the same power source. And then Metabo did something that no other power tool manufacturer had done before or has done since. In 2018, it opened the battery platform to other manufacturers. The Cordless Alliance System, or CAS, was the world's first cross-manufacturer battery system. One Metabo 18-volt battery could power tools from Metabo, Rothenberger, Maffel, Eibenstock, Colomix, Starmix, Steinel, Hagar, Eisenblätter, and dozens more. Over 40 professional tool brands, over 400 different tools, all running on one battery and one charger. The concept was radical. Every other manufacturer in the industry locked its customers into a proprietary battery platform, buy one brand's drill, and you were committed to that brand's batteries, that brand's chargers, and that brand's ecosystem for as long as you use the tools. Metabo went the opposite direction. It made the platform open. The system was built on Metabo's LIHD battery technology, lithium high-density packs that delivered power levels previously possible only with corded tools. The 18-volt LIHD batteries covered a performance range from 400 to 3,200 watts. An angle grinder running on two LIHD batteries could match the output of a 2,400 watt corded grinder. No cable, no generator, and no compromise on output. Every Metabo 18-volt battery sold since 2009 remains compatible with every Metabo 18-volt tool and charger sold since 2009. 16 years of backward compatibility with no forced upgrades, no orphaned batteries, and no customer stranded by a platform change. Metabo held over 500 active patents and utility models. It held 22 patents specifically around cell architecture and cell safety in charging and discharge cycles. The battery technology was not licensed from a supplier. It was developed in Nürtingen by Metabo engineers, in the same town where the company had been making tools for a century. On March 1, 2016, Hitachi Koki Co., letter T, the power tool division of the Japanese conglomerate Hitachi, acquired full ownership of Metabo Aktiengesellschaft. The founding family, executives and employees had held 20% of the company's shares. The corporate holding company, PowerTool Invest BV, based in the Netherlands, held the other 80%. Hitachi purchased all of it. The reported acquisition price was approximately $180 million. Metabo was no longer a family-held company. It was no longer independent. For the first time in 92 years, the company founded by a baker's son, a brewer's son, and a traveling salesman belonged to someone else. 1 year later, in March 2017, Hitachi itself sold Hitachi Koki, including Metabo, to HK Holdings Company Limited, an entity created by the American private equity firm Kohlberg Kravis Roberts. KKR paid approximately $1.3 billion for the entire Hitachi Koki business. Metabo was bundled inside that deal, one asset among many in a portfolio transaction. In June 2018, Hitachi Koki was renamed Koki Holdings Company Limited. The Hitachi Power Tool brand was renamed Hikoki. In North America, the former Hitachi tools were rebranded Metabo HPT, borrowing the Metabo name for a product line that had nothing to do with the Nürtingen factory and had never been engineered by Metabo's German team. The result is a corporate structure that requires a diagram to understand. KKR, an American private equity firm headquartered in New York, owns Koki Holdings, a Japanese corporation headquartered in Tokyo. Koki Holdings owns Metabo, a German company headquartered in Nürtingen, and also owns Hikoki, the rebranded former Hitachi tool line. In North America, the former Hitachi tools are sold under the name Metabo HPT, a brand that shares Metabo's name, but not its engineering, not its factory, and not its century of history. In 2022, Koki Holdings merged the North American operations of Metabo and Metabo HPT under one organizational roof, based in Braselton, Georgia. 2 brands, 1 office, 1 private equity owner. Today, Metabo still manufactures in Nürtingen. The Steinach plant, built in 1953 and expanded continuously over 7 decades, still produces angle grinders, cordless tools and battery packs. The Research and Development Center for the entire Koki Holdings Group is based in Nürtingen. Global purchasing for the group is managed from Nürtingen. The CAS Battery Alliance is coordinated from Nürtingen. The town that started as a location of convenience because Julius Closs happened to own a brewery there became the permanent home of a company that has never found a reason to leave. The company employs roughly 2,000 people worldwide, with approximately 1,200 of them in Nürtingen. It holds over 500 patents. It is described by industry analysts as perhaps the most vertically integrated power tool manufacturer in the world, a company that controls its own motor winding, its own gear cutting, its own battery cell architecture, and its own final assembly. Its angle grinders remain, by many professional assessments, the safest in the industry. The mechanical safety clutch that Metabo invented in 1966 has never been replicated by any competitor. Not because the patent has not expired, because the engineering required to integrate it reliably into a compact tool body has proved too difficult or too expensive for anyone else to match. Metabo does not make consumer tools. It does not sell in home improvement chains, does not compete on price, does not sponsor sporting events, and does not run television advertisements. It competes on the assumption that the person holding the tool will hold it for 8 hours a day in conditions where a failure means an injury, not an inconvenience. But Metabo is no longer Metabo's, the company that was founded by 3 men in a defunct brewery, that survived hyperinflation by exporting in hard currency, that rebuilt after a fire destroyed 3/4 of its factory, that invented the impact drill and the safety clutch and the cross-manufacturer battery alliance. That company is now a subsidiary of a private equity firm. KKR did not build Metabo. KKR did not invent the Metalbohrdreher. KKR did not spend a century developing the mechanical safety clutch or the LIHD battery or the cordless alliance system. KKR bought Hitachi Koki and Metabo happened to be inside the box. The founding family's shares were sold in 2016. The company name was borrowed by a different product line in 2018. The North American operations were merged with a brand that shares nothing but the name in 2022. Albrecht Schnizler founded Metabo because he refused to become a baker. He trained as an engineer, built a drill in a basement during the worst economic crisis in his country's history, and created a company that outlasted 2 world wars. A currency collapse, a factory fire, and a century of industrial change. Julius Closs gave him the space, a shuttered brewery that became the cradle of a 100-year engineering tradition. Walter Rauch gave him the market, an export order in hard currency when the domestic economy was worthless. Between them, they built a tool brand that professionals trusted with their hands and their livelihoods for 100 years. That trust was not built by a private equity firm. It was not built by a corporate holding structure registered in Tokyo and financed from New York. It was built in a small town in Württemberg by engineers who understood that when a grinder binds in steel and the operator cannot let go fast enough, the only thing between that person and a shattered disc is the quality of the clutch inside the tool. Metabo still makes that clutch. Metabo still makes it in Nürtingen. The question is how long a company owned by private equity will continue to invest in engineering that takes a century to build and a single quarterly earnings report to dismantle. That is not pessimism. That is the history of every tool brand that has been sold to a financial owner and asked to deliver returns on a timeline that has nothing to do with the lifetime of a tool. The drill that started it all, number 18, the metal bore drayer, built in a bakery basement in 1923, still sits in the lobby of the Nürtingen headquarters. It has been there for 100 years. Whether the company that built it will remain in the same condition for another 100 is no longer a question that engineers in Nürtingen get to answer.